As committee hearings against big tech continue, it appears that Facebook has found a way to divide the US government in a way that it truly looks as if it could halter any progress in more regulation of companies like Facebook, Twitter, Google, and more, in which the Senate have been chasing for months at this point. Much of the Senate committee hearings have revolved around issues such as potential monopolization by big tech over their respective industries, political misinformation on their platforms, issues of possible conservative censorship, and the amount of regulation by who will be needed to keep these companies honest. It's been quite a long process already, and as of now, looks like it could be even much longer as is. Now, Facebook has been in the center of a large-scale investigation by the US federal government due to several different issues that have sent waves not only through the social media world, but the world in general. From situations like the Cambridge Analytica scandal to continuing issues of political misinformation sometimes being overlooked by Facebook according to whistleblowers, they've found themselves in the center of everything also due to their sheer size as a company. I mean, starting from a college dorm room, Mark Zuckerberg has built Facebook into one of the most valuable companies ever, with more control over the average person's daily life than most other companies as well. Honestly, this really looked like it could have been an open and shut case for the Senate at the beginning of this entire thing. At the very front of the line, it looked like everything was going to go well, but unfortunately, it's kind of unraveled. The whole situation has fallen to a point that I'm not sure it will recover from. I mean, Facebook, along with other tech companies like Apple and Twitter, looked clearly guilty of shady behavior across the board that needed to be addressed. However, as time goes on, the clear misunderstandings of social media by the mostly elderly Senate, along with political issues divided along party lines, have caused such a divide that it appears Facebook might actually walk away unscathed from most of this, at least with minimal impact against them. But the best way to have minimal impact from threats in the online world is with the use of Dashlane. Dashlane is a secure, easy-to-use, everyday tool for your PC, phone, or tablet. Dashlane saves you time online by auto-generating your passwords to make them safer, and stores all of them for a more simple login process. With Dashlane, you don't need to spend time manually resetting passwords or entering in your credit card and personal information. It just works with 2 clicks. On top of storing your digital information, Dashlane has a built-in VPN to protect you from being tracked online. Dashlane's encryption makes it one of the safest ways to store your digital information and makes your life easier. You can try Dashlane for free on your first device at dashlane.com/Optimus. And if you decide to upgrade to premium to use Dashlane everywhere, you can use my code Optimus for 10% off. Over the last week and a half or so, some quite major developments have come in this long-running big tech hearing story that I've been covering now, from more hearings against Jack Dorsey from Twitter and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. These hearings, instead of focusing on real-world issues that could be immediately tackled, appeared to be more divided on political party, as Republicans accused the 2 CEOs of anti-conservative censorship on their platforms, while Democrats accused the 2 CEOs of being too lax on political misinformation on their platforms and not doing enough to stop potential political violence being incited by right-wing members on their platforms. Now, for instance, Twitter is accused of throttling the accounts of the New York Post, which is obviously a major publication here in the United States, for around 2 weeks, possibly due to the release of their story surrounding, Hunter Biden. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been accused of calling for violence against the nation and people of Israel through Twitter, calling the country, quote, a cancerous growth, and even has used Twitter to publicly call for the eradication of the people of Israel. Obviously, if the average user were to do something like this, they would probably be banned within minutes by Twitter, especially if reports came through. That kind of stuff would not be allowed for the average person. It would be considered extremely anti-Semitic. It would be considered threatening. It would be considered vile. But because it was done by the Supreme Leader of Iran, Twitter seems to have taken virtually no action. In fact, Twitter publicly claimed that his comments are considered, quote, political commentary. Meanwhile, when President Donald Trump has made claims such as the ones about infamous mail-in ballots, Twitter has been near instantaneous in marking his tweets with fact-checkers, even occasionally taking it further than just that and marking some of Trump's tweets as violations of Twitter rules, but also marking them with a notice that says that they're being kept for public consumption due to the potential interest, of the general public. This inaction against Iran while focusing on American President Donald Trump has led to accusations of double standards, not only politically in global politics, but also in political views here against the left and right spectrum of our politics. Democrats, despite these efforts by platforms like Facebook and Twitter, have made the claim that these platforms have not done enough to stifle some quote-unquote harmful speech. In fact, Democrats focused on a group that used Facebook to create real-life meetups and rallies and events called, quote, Stop the Steal, which is a grassroots organization, seems to lean a little bit more right-wing in favor pro-Donald Trump, that protested nationally demanding vote recounts. Claims were made that the group only mobilized due to Trump claiming election fraud was occurring and that he had won the election several times, according to Senate Judiciary Committee Ranking Member Dianne Feinstein from California. She further claimed that members of Stop the Steal protested outside of voting centers with what she called, quote, assault weapons. Furthermore, Senator Chris Coons from Delaware made the point that these companies, in particular Twitter, were not doing enough to restrict conversation that spread the notion that climate change and other environmental issues were not true or legitimate. He claimed that, quote, Twitter should reconsider that because helping to disseminate climate denialism, in my view, further accelerates one of the greatest existential threats to our world today. Now, regardless of your views on climate change and the legitimacy of the science behind it and whatnot, I think we can all agree that a senator openly calling for a social media platform to restrict speech that doesn't align with popular consensus is extremely worrisome. While personally I believe that climate change, especially man-made, is quite a legitimate threat for that countless scientists and global organizations have evidence for, I don't believe that billion-dollar tech companies that run social medias are the groups that should tell people whether or not that they cannot have the opinion that it isn't. In fact, I think all that a move like this does is actually harm us. It emboldens and strengthens cases for anti-climate change folks. It makes them feel more oppressed socially and gives them the, quote, but if it weren't true, why did Twitter act so hard? Why did they take us out? Argument to bail themselves out instead of facing the science head on. On the other side of the aisle, though, Republicans still are largely focused on what they call anti-conservative censorship by social media. In October, Republicans voted unanimously to summon Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, leaving Democrats out as they didn't vote on such a subpoena. The two CEOs were asked to provide plans to tackle political issues on their platforms within a week, which to be fair is quite a short amount of time to act on virtually anything on that scale for either platform. Mark Zuckerberg went as far as to claim that Facebook had expected President Donald Trump to deny the results of the presidential election had he lost to Joe Biden or another opponent. Senator Mike Lee from Utah said that Facebook and Twitter took a, quote, partisan approach, aka they favored one side of the political spectrum, this time accusing them of leaning favorably left or Democrat as Twitter had not flagged a New York Times tweet containing Donald Trump's tax returns or any tweet from NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. Chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee Lindsey Graham brought up the blocking of the New York Post's story around Hunter Biden's laptop shortly before the election on Twitter, claiming that they were the ultimate editor and that, quote, editorial decisions at the New York Post were overridden by Twitter. If that's not making an editorial decision, I don't know what is. Twitter claims that the story was initially blocked because they believed the information was obtained due to hacking and that they later reversed their decision. But even with this later action, it's pretty clear that spread and potential public exposure to the story was clearly altered by Twitter in an unfair manner extremely quickly. Now, while our politicians have turned the failures, the corporate overreach, and potential control over our daily lives of these social media companies into partisan issues to make themselves feel like victims, the true victims are the American people, the tens of millions of people who had their information unfairly manipulated during the Cambridge Analytica scandal, or the countless people that have all their data consistently combed through and used against them by these companies, including the one that owns the website you're watching right now. These politicians have yet to show me personally that they care about the real issues that these companies present, their abilities to control virtually all major points of the average American life. That's unprecedented threats that need to be addressed. And with all of that, as time goes on, these companies continue to grow. They don't get smaller. And with the growth comes more overreach potential. These companies, if not already, are quickly developing to the point that they're becoming monopolies. They're truly in control of way too much. Whether or not that they do is a different argument, but they can alter the news that you see, what information you digest, who becomes political leaders globally, how you feel at any given time, what you're allowed to say or think on social media, how your friends perceive you even. They advertise you products. The amount of power that they have collectively is scary and needs to be addressed. While the European Union is fining companies like Amazon insane amounts of money for their screw-ups, our politicians have turned this situation into a tit-for-tat argument. And for Facebook and other companies, this is the perfect outcome. They can now play this however they want. They've divided this along party lines without even trying, and the members of this committee don't even functionally understand the internet as it is. For Facebook and their legal teams, this can end up a quick walk in the park with maybe minimal harm done to them at the rate that it's going. And even more concerningly, in my opinion, recent committee hearings that I've been talking about here in videos were hardly covered by the mainstream media whatsoever. In fact, and this is according to Fox News, major media programs such as NBC Nightly News, ABC's World News, and CBS's Evening News all chose not to cover these particular hearings, which were extremely political in nature and involved some of the biggest companies of all time that tens of millions of Americans actively use on a daily basis. The lack of coverage from the mainstream media on a topic like this not only is worrisome due to the importance, but it's really downright ridiculous. I'm glad that I've continued to cover the whole subject because it appears that these issues aren't important enough for the mainstream to cover, so if you want to keep up to date with all of this, make sure to hit subscribe if you're brand new. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Tell me what you think down below. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. Thank you to my channel members. Your support helps my channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, just paying attention and signing out.